On Tuesday, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre voted against the Liberal government's plan to increase capital gains inclusion rate. Now, while the measure still passed, it ends weeks of speculation about where Conservatives stood on this particular issue, with the party calling it a job-killing tax. For more on his views, we're joined by the leader of the Conservative Party, candidate for Prime Minister and MP for Carleton, Pierre Poilievre. Pierre, thank you so much for joining me.
Good to be with you.
So you're ahead in the polls. The number one question most investors want to know is, if you're in office, would you roll back the increase?
Well, two things I'd say on the outset. First of all, this tax increase, this job-killing tax increase on farmers, home builders, small businesses, and healthcare is nothing short of economic vandalism. Here we are with a food price crisis, and the Prime Minister's jacking up taxes by 30% on the farmers who feed us. We have a housing crisis, and the Prime Minister is taxing home builders. We have a healthcare crisis, and he's taxing away our doctors. And we have the fastest shrinking economy in the G7, and he's taxing our small businesses. On the question of whether I repeal it, I'm still not sure I would have to, because I'm not sure the Liberals are actually going to have the spine to go ahead with this. They still haven't introduced legislation to put it in law. They will do that in the fall. And I think if the people who are affected by this tax hike fire their useless lobbyists who've been utterly ineffective in countering this proposal over the last several months, and really launch a pressure campaign that gets Canadians to rise up against the tax, I think that Freeland might be forced to back down, just as the Liberals had to back in 2017 when they proposed tax hikes on small businesses.
So you think there's still a coalition that could come together in the business community and the investment community and fight this thing before it becomes law? I would suggest that maybe that doesn't feel like it's possible right now, but you're saying it is.
Well, first of all, the businesses have been utterly ineffective because they're relying on useless lobbyists at the Chamber of Commerce, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, the Business Council, totally useless organizations that have been telling their members that they're having these productive meetings behind the scenes and they think they're getting some progress out of it. Meanwhile, the Liberals were just dragging them along. The only thing the Liberals care about is votes. And the business community did not focus on voters. So they have to show voters that that people could lose jobs, that food will cost more money, that there'll be fewer homes built. So your 35-year-old will still be living in your basement when he's 40, that you could lose your family doctor. If people across the country are informed of that, they will rise up, pressure Liberal MPs, and Freeland will be forced to amend or retract her legislation in the fall.
Well, let's assume then, to use your words, that they remain useless for the next couple of months and they're unable to convince the current government. I go back to my original question. The law is in place. Let's assume, and the polls are correct, you'll be Prime Minister. Would you roll it back if it were law?
I'm announcing today on your program that I'm not announcing today on your program my election platform for the campaign, which will begin in 14 months. But what I am telling you is that a common sense conservative government led by Pierre Poilievre will form a tax reform task force within 60 days of my taking office that will design a bring it home tax cut that will have three goals. One, lower taxes on work, hiring, and making stuff to bring home paychecks and production to Canada. Two, fairer, by reducing the share paid by the poor and working class and paying for it by cutting back on tax-funded corporate welfare and attacking offshore tax havens. And three, simpler, with the goal of cutting the paperwork costs of the tax system by 20%. So lower, fairer, simpler. That will be the bring it home tax cut that I bring in, and you'll find out about it in the months ahead. as we get closer to the election.
Well, can we talk about what maybe some of those options look like when you talk about fair, specifically on those that are working? I think that's the heart of the issue, labor versus capital and the rate that that's being taxed at. So I've been asking you about the capital side. Does that mean that a cut on the income side is not outside the realm of possibility?
It is not outside the realm of possibility. In fact, I will be cutting income taxes.
And do you have a sense of the magnitude yet?
I can't give you that sense because we don't know how bad the books are. Like, this is a government who ruin the books month after month. I mean, look, a year ago, they said the budget would be balanced in 2028. And in one fall economic update and one more budget, they've managed to extend that into infinity. Now they say the budget will be balanced never. They added another $60 billion of unbudgeted, unplanned spending in their most recent budget. So all of this to say, I can't tell you how much more damage Trudeau and Freeland will have done by the time I get to the point where I'm writing a platform, because that's 14 months away, and that could be hundreds of billions of dollars in additional debt and economic damage. That's why I say Justin Trudeau and the NDP government, this is an NDP government, by the way, the NDP government of Justin Trudeau is not worth the cost. It has been 9 years of economic vandalism that must come to an end with a common sense conservative government that will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime.
Well, I'm curious about whether those two things can go together, that is, axing the tax and build the homes, because the current pitch is the taxes need to go up to build those homes. And if they didn't increase on the revenue side, then they would be increasing on the debt side. And so they're actually suggesting that this is the fiscally responsible thing to do. Instead of increasing the debt and funding that expansion through debt, is they're raising taxes to pay for those homes.
I reject the Soviet notion that it's governments that build homes. It is builders that build homes. This is the problem. Trudeau's brought in $90 billion in housing affordability measures. And what has been the result? The housing costs have doubled. Rent has doubled. Mortgage payments have doubled. Down payments have doubled. So why is it that the more the government spends on affordable housing, the more expensive housing gets? Very simple. Because the money goes into bureaucracy. Bureaucrats don't build homes. Yet today in Ontario, there is a third of the cost of every new home is bureaucracy. Permitting charges, delays, taxes, and so on. We are literally spending more on bureaucrats in offices for each new home build than we spend on the carpenters, electricians, and plumbers that build the homes. I'm going to cut the bureaucracy and spend less on these bureaucratic programs, and we're going to get more homes by requiring municipalities speed up the permits, free up the land, lower the development charges to permit 15% more home building per year as a condition of getting federal funds. Those cities that beat my target will get more federal infrastructure money. Those that miss my target will pay a fine. We're going to sell off 6,000 federal buildings and thousands of acres of federal land to build, 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 build. We don't need more government. We need more building. And that's what a common sense conservative government will deliver. I'm glad that you brought up bureaucracy, because certainly one part of the resilient job growth that we've seen over the past couple of years has been in the public sector. What do you make of that? And if you come to office, the question is, will you just halt that growth, or will you be looking at dramatic reductions in public sector workforce? We will halt the growth, and we will cut the $21 billion that Trudeau is now spending on outside consultants. That works out to $1,400 per family in Canada. And that is a 100% increase, by the way, in 9 years. So we are spending 100% more on outside consultants to deliver worse services while we have a bureaucracy that is 40% bigger. My common sense plan would slash the consultants, the high-priced consultants, bring that work in-house so that the bureaucracy can actually do the job. that it's paid to do. And we're going to stop adding bureaucrats to the payroll and start delivering more efficient services to the people. I'll be bringing in a common sense dollar for dollar law, like the one that existed under Clinton in the 90s in the US, which requires my government find $1 of savings for every new dollar of spending, so that the bureaucracy has to make the same necessary trade-offs that single moms, small businesses, and seniors make to balance their household budgets. And when the Americans did that for 6 or 7 years in the 90s, they balanced the US government budget for the first time and the only time since I was born. As soon as the law lapsed, they went back into deficit. It proves that politicians need legal limits on their spending in order to protect taxpayers from the growing cost of government.
The senior deputy governor at the Bank of Canada, Carolyn Rogers, said that Canada's economy is in a productivity emergency. And this is something that you've addressed several times. You put out kind of a 15-minute video on productivity, explaining what it is and why it's important. Are you the productivity candidate?
Yes. I encourage everyone to watch Economic Vandalism. Economic Vandalism is the title of my documentary on this subject. And it shows how, first of all, if you take investment per worker in Canada compared to the US, our average worker gets 55 cents of business investment for every dollar that American worker gets, and only about 60 cents for every dollar the average OECD worker gets. That means poorer, older machines to help them produce, and therefore lower wages. Because despite the fact we have the best workers, they don't have the best tools. And as a result, in terms of productivity is very simple. It's the number of hours we work as an economy divided by our GDP divided by the number of hours we work. And if you do that math, we're producing 52 American dollars of value per hour. In the States, they're producing $78. So who's going to make a bigger wage? So the American, obviously. How do we change it? We need to cut taxes to make this the most attractive place to invest. We need the fastest building permits in the world for mines, pipelines, shopping centers, factories. And then third, we need more competition in our economy. So lower taxes, faster permits, more fierce competition is what's going to unleash production and paychecks for our people.
That allows me to bring it kind of back to the beginning, because all of that does require investment. And the main criticism on this capital gains increase has been that it hinders investment. And I know you've said there'll be reductions potentially on the income side. You know, I hear that you won't commit on rolling back on the investment side, on the capital gains side. But is that also going to be an area that you're looking at, that you're targeting?
Yes, my bring it home tax cut will mean lower taxes on hiring and making stuff. Businesses need to know that if they build that new factory to pay six-figure salaries to millwrights, mechanics, and electricians, that they'll get a return. Right now, there's $400 billion more of Canadian investment gone to the States than from the States in Canada. By the way, for the 14 years prior to Trudeau taking office, there was more American investment in Canada than there was Canadian investment in the US. So this is a big reversal. $500 billion of our investment has poured into the US under Justin Trudeau, creating jobs for American workers. I want to bring that money home. Bring it home is my slogan to describe how we're going to cut taxes, speed up permits, and unleash competition so that this is the best place on earth to work, hire, and make stuff.